and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. Today's video is sponsored by our Amazon affiliate link, which you'll see in the description section below. You'll also see in the description section below links to any videos that I mentioned in this video. So today I'm going to talk to you about bromeliad, growing bromeliads indoors. They are a beautiful plant. They come in many vibrant colors in terms of their blooms. Even their leaves are very structurally beautiful, architectural. They do have spines a lot of times, so you have to be careful when you are working with them indoors, when you're touching them, when you're moving them. But to look at them, they're very lovely. If you have the soft candlelight on at night or something, they will, or even your lights are dimmed, they'll cast beautiful shadows on your wall. So I would definitely recommend considering growing these beautiful plants indoors. They are actually colorful members of the pineapple family. So they are in the pineapple family, which is really cool to know. And they produce, as mentioned, many different types of beautiful blooms in many different color combinations. There are pinks and purples and many of these reds and yellows and vibrant red. There are even some green blooms as well. This plant is native to South America, but it grows in many climates. As mentioned, pineapple is the most famous of the varieties of this plant family. There are also tilangias, such as Spanish moss. So the Spanish moss that you see growing from trees, growing suspended from trees, and you can also grow it in your garden and even in your indoor garden with some care. Those are also relatives. In the Bromeliad family. They can be grown in soil and containers, such as this one here. But you do have some care things to keep in mind in terms of keeping them looking good indoors. One really good thing is they will keep their blooms on for months if you give them the proper care. So, which is great to know, because they especially if you make an investment in a bromeliad, it's good to know that it's going to last a while. So. When you do buy one, though, look for one where the flower looks and feels very firm still, and very vibrant and very colorful still. Because if it were a little bit squishy, or if it's there's a main stem here and the various bracts here are connected, if you were to pull on one, it comes off easily. That means that the flower is finishing. So you want to find it at the beginning stages, even if it's starting to bud up works as well. So in terms of keeping them looking good in your house and staying alive and looking well, the number one thing is not to overwater them. They don't do well with being overwatered. And even in their native habitats, how they generally grow is they will collect within their foliage water, and that's what they live off of. So that's collected when it rains, and then they continue to live off the water that way. So they are not really plants that are generally accustomed to growing in the soil, but they can be grown in the soil. So that being said, you do not want to keep the soil perpetually wet. You want to do what I generally recommend with other houseplants, and that is water the plant when the soil is approaching dryness. So that means not yet dry, but definitely not still wet. So that, if you use a moisture meter, and I have a video on using moisture meter, is usually in the 4 range. 1 to 3 is generally in the red range, which is dry, and 4 is still some moisture, but getting to dryness. Because what will happen if you do overwater these, they will actually succumb, rather than root rot, which a lot of plants succumb to when they're overwatered, they will actually succumb to crown rot. And crown rot for a plant is right at the base of the plant where the trunk, the main stem, is attached to its roots, and the roots are below in the soil, and the top of the plant is above. And what happens is when it just becomes way too wet in the soil on a perpetual basis is that top part, that stem part, will rot. And signs of that is if you touch the base of the plant and it is squishy, and you feel like if you kept touching it, you could actually pull the plant out of the pot without the roots, then that is a sign that it has crown rot. So keep that in mind. That being said, when you do repot a bromeliad, so a lot of times you'll get it in soil. And what you want to do when you do get it in soil is you want to generally leave it alone while it's blooming, because if you do try to repot it when it's in bloom, you may finish off the blooming a lot faster. So I would suggest just when you get it home, watering correctly and putting in the right lighting conditions until it's done blooming. Later, when you're ready to repot, you want to put it in a potting soil that is very well draining. So you want to amend with pumice or perlite to enhance good drainage. And I will include a link to my pumice at the bottom of the video. And I do also have videos on using pumice in your soil as well. So it's a very good draining agent, which is really important for the bromeliads. Proper lighting also really important for them. They need to be grown, if you're growing them outdoors, they need to be grown in filtered sunlight, so not in full sun. And if you're growing them indoors, you need to grow them in bright light. However, be careful not to put them too close to southern or western windows that have that are unobstructed, especially, so no trees or anything growing outside. So very bright light coming through that window. You will want to put them about 2 or 3 feet away from the window so that you don't get any burn on their leaves. But that will give them that sort of placement, 2 to 3 feet away from such windows, would get them great light for growing well. They also love to be in an eastern window with that beautiful morning sunlight. That works well as well. If you have less light, I would suggest using the artificial lighting. So full spectrum, always use full spectrum, which mimics daylight indoors. And it comes in all sorts of bulbs nowadays. You can put into any fixture the full spectrum lighting. So keep that in mind to keep the plant nice and the bloom doing well and the plant itself doing well. One thing they don't do real well with is being under heating or air conditioning ducts. That will tend to dry out the bloom, so keep that in mind as well. When the plant is done with the bloom, cut the bloom off all the way down at the base of the bloom and make sure to give it lots of bright light and water correctly. And at that point, you would want to fertilize with an organic fertilizer, putting the link to my fertilizer below, my green gourmet fertilizer below, for houseplants below as well for that. And that will, a lot of the times, initiate a new bloom. Keep in mind, however, could take a while for that bloom to come back. And so you'll have to have some patience. You can also, if you live in a mild climate or over summer them outdoors out in the shade, just keep them in filtered light, as mentioned before, because you do not want them out in full sun unless you live on the coast where you have some of the more protection from the sun's really harsh rays. You could grow them outdoors in full sun. You want to prune and clean them up periodically. For instance, this one has a little bit of a leaf back here that I'm going to want. You can a lot of times pull them off, but sometimes you need to get pruners, but prune them off at the base. So keep that in mind. That's a good thing to do, besides the fact that it makes the plant look good. Any old foliage will attract pests and diseases. However, bromeliads are pretty fail-safe in terms of indoor pests and diseases. They don't tend to attract them very often. So that's another great thing about growing them. They don't mind some extra humidity if you want to give it to them, but they don't necessarily require it. However, if you would like to put them over a humidity tray, if you live in a very dry climate, they will like that. I have a video on creating humidity trays. Misting, keep in mind that misting is very temporary, so it's only going to help the plant for a few minutes, and then generally speaking, the moisture is gone. But you can mist it if you like misting. Mist the plant several times a day. That also gives it some humidity. And putting the plant with a lot of other plants will give it lots of humidity, because plants will humidify each other. So if you want, as mentioned, a beautiful plant that has a lot of architectural and color interest, then this is a plant to try in your indoor garden. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, and share this video, and check the bell if you'd like to be notified when we release new videos.